Let her die. The words cut through the field hospital louder than the generators outside. A young medic froze with both hands pressed over the wounded woman's side. Blood had darkened the fabric beneath her tactical vest, but her eyes were still open, steady, alert, watching every face around her. Major Victor Hale stood at the end of the stretcher, his gloves clean, his expression colder than the rain hammering the canvas roof. "We have 6 confirmed soldiers coming in," he said. "She has no identification, no unit patch, and no medical priority code. Move her out of trauma." The medic stared at him. "Sir, she's losing blood." "I heard you. Then we need to operate." Hale glanced at the woman as if she were damaged equipment someone had left in the wrong room. "We need those supplies for people we can verify." The wounded woman did not speak. She had been carried through the eastern gate less than 4 minutes earlier, half conscious and covered in dust. The 2 soldiers who brought her in had disappeared before anyone could question them. One had shouted that more wounded were still trapped beyond the ridge. The other had only said one word before running back toward the vehicles. "Raven." No one inside the hospital understood what it meant. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and respect, hit like and subscribe. These stories inspire change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Maya. Captain Nora Bennett, the medic beside the stretcher, tightened the pressure bandage. "She has a pulse," Nora said. "She followed my commands when we brought her in. She can still make it." Hale's jaw shifted. "This is not a discussion, Captain." Around them, the hospital moved in controlled chaos. Boots struck the concrete floor. Radios hissed from every corner. A generator coughed, recovered, then filled the tent with its low mechanical growl. Outside, another helicopter approached through the storm. Maya Cross lay perfectly still beneath the harsh white lights. Her uniform had been torn at the shoulder. Mud covered the place where a name tape should have been. No rank was visible. No flag. No insignia. Only a faded black watch remained strapped to her wrist, its glass cracked across the center. A corpsman near the supply cabinet looked at it and shook his head. "Probably a contractor," he muttered. Another soldier gave a humorless laugh. "Or someone who wandered too close to the fighting." Maya's fingers moved. Not toward her wound. Toward the edge of the stretcher. She gripped it once, testing her strength. Nora noticed. "Don't move," she said quietly. "You're safe here." Maya's gaze shifted toward the entrance. 3 empty stretchers waited beside the door. "More coming," she whispered. Her voice was rough, but there was command beneath it. Nora leaned closer. "Yes." "How many?" "At least 6. Maya closed her eyes for half a second. "Not from pain. Calculation." Hale stepped forward. "Captain Bennett, remove her from trauma now." Nora did not move. "Sir, give me 5 minutes." "You have orders." "She has a chance." Hale's face hardened. "So do the soldiers outside. Stop wasting time on someone who may not even belong here." The room went silent around them. Maya opened her eyes again. This time, she looked directly at Hale. There was no fear in her expression, no plea for mercy, only a quiet, unnerving focus. The look of someone measuring distance, exits, voices, and time. Then a radio on the wall erupted with static. "Field Hospital, this is Convoy 3. We have multiple critical casualties inbound." Hale pointed toward the side corridor. "Move her." 2 orderlies approached the stretcher. Maya turned her head toward Nora. "The soldier in the second vehicle," she whispered. "Check his left lung first." Nora frowned. "How could you know that?" Maya's breathing grew shallower. "Because I carried him halfway down the ridge." The orderlies stopped. Hale stared at her. For the first time, uncertainty entered his face. Maya's hand slipped from the edge of the stretcher. But before her eyes closed, she gave Nora one final instruction. "If he stops breathing, don't wait for the doctor." Then the hospital doors burst open, and the first wounded SEAL was rushed inside. The first SEAL came through the doors unconscious. His uniform was soaked with rain and blood, one sleeve cut open from shoulder to wrist. 2 corpsmen pushed the stretcher hard enough that its wheels rattled across the floor. 32-year-old male, one shouted. Blast exposure, penetrating trauma, severe respiratory distress. Nora moved immediately. Trauma Bay 2. Hale pointed toward the operating area. "Get him inside. Now." The wounded man's chest rose unevenly. Each breath came shorter than the last. Nora placed her stethoscope against him, listening once, then again. His right side moved. His left did not. She looked toward Maya. The woman lay near the wall where the orderlies had pushed her stretcher. Her face had lost more color, but her eyes were open again. Left lung, Maya whispered. Nora did not hesitate. Prepare for decompression. One of the junior medics stared at her. Without imaging. We don't have time. Hale turned sharply. Captain, what are you doing? Saving him. The SEAL's pulse began to fall. Nora worked quickly. Within seconds, trapped air escaped, and the wounded man dragged in a deeper breath. The monitor steadied. For one brief moment, the hospital seemed to stop. Even Hale said nothing. Maya watched from across the room. Not relieved. Focused. As if she had expected it. A second stretcher arrived. Then a third. The quiet field hospital became a storm of shouted numbers, torn uniforms, metal instruments, and boots sliding across the wet floor. Every available medic moved toward the new casualties. Everyone except Maya. She remained alone beneath a flickering light. No one had cleaned the blood from her neck. No one had checked the bandage Nora had placed minutes earlier. A dark stain continued to spread beneath her side. A young corpsman passed her and looked down. You still conscious? Maya nodded once. Name? Maya Cross. Rank? She paused. Maya Cross. He frowned. That's not what I asked. Maya's gaze shifted toward the SEAL in Trauma Bay 2. Will he live? The corpsman glanced over his shoulder. Probably. Then go help the next one. Something in her voice made him obey. Across the room, Hale was reviewing incoming casualty tags. He looked irritated, not concerned. Every unidentified patient created paperwork. Every missing unit number created questions from command. He approached Maya with a tablet in his hand. Full name. You have it. Branch. She said nothing. Unit. Silence. Hale exhaled through his nose. Listen carefully. You arrived without identification, without escort, and without authorization. I need to know whether you are military, civilian, or local support. Maya looked at his clean gloves. You need to stop the bleeding. You need to answer the question. Her jaw tightened as pain moved through her side. I was attached to the patrol. In what capacity? She looked past him toward the entrance. The rain had turned the doorway into a gray curtain. Beyond it, engines idled in the darkness. Men shouted coordinates. A helicopter circled but could not land. Security, she said. Hale gave a small, skeptical laugh. You? Maya met his eyes. Yes. He looked at her size, her torn uniform, and the cracked watch on her wrist. You expect me to believe you were providing security for a SEAL patrol? I don't care what you believe. The words were quiet. That made them heavier. Hale stepped closer. You are in my hospital. No, Maya said. I'm in a forward aid station 12 kilometers from a compromised ridge, with at least 4 hostile positions still active north of the convoy route. Hale's expression changed. Only slightly. But she saw it. How do you know that? Maya did not answer. A radio operator near the entrance suddenly raised his voice. Major, command is requesting confirmation on an unidentified female casualty. Hale turned. What name? The operator pressed the headset closer. They didn't give one. Then what did they give? The operator looked toward Maya. A call sign. Every person within hearing distance slowed. The radio crackled again. The operator swallowed. They're asking whether Raven made it back alive. Maya closed her eyes. Hale turned toward her once more. This time, he did not look amused. The call sign changed the room. Not loudly. Not all at once. But the shift was immediate. The radio operator straightened in his chair. A medic near the supply cabinet stopped opening a package. Even the orderlies who had been preparing to move Maya into the side corridor paused with their hands on the stretcher rails. Hale looked from the radio to Maya. Raven, he repeated. Maya did not answer. The operator pressed one hand against his headset. Command wants visual confirmation. Tell them we have an unidentified woman, Hale said. Critical condition. No documents. The operator relayed the message. Static answered first. Then a voice came through, sharper than before. Describe her. Hale frowned. Dark hair. Mid-30s. Torn combat uniform. No visible rank. The voice on the radio did not hesitate. Cracked black watch on her left wrist. Everyone looked down. The faded watch remained strapped to Maya's arm. Its broken glass caught the white hospital light. The operator turned pale. Yes. Another burst of static. Then, keep her alive. The order landed differently from anything Hale had said that night. not as a request, as a command. Maya watched Hale's face tighten. For the first time since she had arrived, he looked uncertain about where authority truly rested. "Who is this?" he demanded. The reply came after a brief silence. "Commander Reeves." No one spoke. Hale knew the name. So did Nora. Commander Daniel Reeves led the Special Operations Detachment stationed beyond the eastern sector. His movements were rarely announced, his assignments never discussed, and his people did not appear in normal casualty records. Hale reached for the radio. "This is Major Victor Hale, Senior Medical Officer. I have multiple verified casualties and limited surgical resources. The woman has no identification and refuses to provide her unit." Maya's eyes opened. "She didn't refuse," Reeves said. The line crackled. "She protected it." Hale's hand tightened around the radio. "Protected what?" No answer came. Instead, another voice broke in from outside the hospital. "Second vehicle incoming." The doors opened again. Rain swept across the floor as two more wounded men were carried inside. One was conscious, gripping the side of the stretcher hard enough to whiten his knuckles. "Where is she?" he demanded. A medic pushed him toward Trauma Bay 3. "Sir, stay still." "Where is Raven?" The wounded man twisted against the straps, scanning the room until he saw Maya near the wall. His entire expression changed. "Ma'am." The word came out weak, but unmistakable. "Respectful." Hale looked between them. The SEAL tried to sit up. "She got us out," he said. "She held the ridge after the convoy went down." Nora moved toward him. "You need to lie back." She stayed behind. His breathing turned ragged. 3 positions. Maybe 4. She drew them off while we moved the wounded. Hale stared at Maya. She looked too small beneath the hospital blanket. Too pale. Too still. Nothing about her matched the picture forming in the room. The SEAL continued, each word forced through pain. "When Miller went down, she carried him. When the radio failed, she crossed open ground to restore the signal." He looked directly at Hale. "And when we reached the road, she ordered us to leave her." Hale's voice dropped. "Why?" The man gave a bitter laugh. "Because someone had to stop them from following." Across the room, the monitor beside Maya began to alarm. Nora turned instantly. Her pulse was falling. The stain beneath the bandage had spread across the sheet. "Pressure's crashing," Nora shouted. The hospital moved again, this time toward Maya. Hale stepped in front of the stretcher. "Prepare surgery." Nora met his eyes. "You said she wasn't worth the supplies." His face hardened. "That was before. Before you knew who she was?" The question struck harder than an accusation. Hale said nothing. Nora pushed past him and reached for the wound dressing. Maya's hand caught her wrist. Weakly, "Not me first." Nora leaned closer. "You don't have time." Maya looked toward the newly arrived SEAL. "Check his abdomen." "He's stable." "No," Maya whispered. "He isn't." Nora turned. The man's face had gone gray. A medic pulled back the blanket and found blood pooling beneath him. Internal bleed. The room erupted again. Nora looked back at Maya. Even now, barely conscious, she had seen what everyone else missed. Maya released her wrist. "Do your job, Captain." Nora stood frozen for half a second. Then she gave the order. "Take him to Surgery 1. Hale stared at Maya. As the stretcher rushed past, she had been denied treatment. Mocked. Moved aside. Yet every time someone else entered the room, she noticed their wounds before her own. The radio crackled once more. Commander Reeves's voice returned. "Major Hale, I am 3 minutes out." Hale looked toward the doors. "And when I arrive," Reeves continued, "you will explain why the officer who saved my entire team was left bleeding against a wall." Commander Reeves arrived before the rain stopped. The hospital doors opened under the force of the wind, and 3 men stepped inside wearing soaked combat uniforms. The first was tall, broad-shouldered, and gray at the temples. His face carried the hard stillness of someone who had spent too many years making decisions under fire. No one needed to ask who he was. Commander Daniel Reeves scanned the room once. Wounded men. Open surgical trays. Blood on the floor. Then he saw Maya against the wall. He stopped. For half a second, the entire hospital seemed to hold its breath. Reeves crossed the room quickly, but not carelessly. He moved with the controlled urgency of a man refusing to let fear become visible. "Nora," he said. "She's still conscious," Nora replied. "Barely." Reeves looked down at Maya. Her eyes opened at the sound of his voice. "You took your time," she whispered. A flicker of relief passed across his face. "Traffic." Maya almost smiled. Then pain tightened her expression. Reeves turned toward Hale. What happened? Hale straightened. We received multiple critical casualties at once. She arrived without identification or visible rank. I had to prioritize confirmed personnel. Reeves stared at him. Confirmed personnel. Yes, sir. You mean men whose uniforms were clean enough for you to read? Hale's jaw tightened. That is not what I said. No, Reeves replied. It is what you did. The hospital grew quiet again. Even the medics working across the room seemed to lower their voices. Hale gestured toward Maya. She refused to provide her unit. She was following protocol. She was bleeding to death. And still following protocol. Reeves stepped closer. She was operating under restricted identification. Her team was compromised. Her mission details were classified. She told you what she was allowed to tell you. Hale's face hardened. I had no way of knowing who she was. Reeves looked at Maya's blood-soaked bandage. You had a wounded human being in front of you. The words came softly. That made them impossible to ignore. Nora checked Maya's pulse again. It's weaker. Reeves turned immediately. What does she need? Blood, surgery, and time she may not have. Then move. Nora did not. There's a problem. Hale glanced toward the operating bays. Both surgical teams are occupied. Reeves looked across the room. One team worked on the seal Maya had identified with the collapsed lung. The other was treating the man with internal bleeding. Maya had sent both of them ahead of herself. Reeves understood instantly. You gave up your place. Maya's eyes remained closed. They were worse. You don't know that. I did. Reeves leaned closer. You always do this. Her voice was barely audible. Still worked. A young medic rushed over carrying a blood bag. We found 2 units of O negative. Nora took them. Start the line. Hale stepped forward. Those units were reserved for incoming casualties. Reeves turned slowly. No anger showed on his face now. Only disbelief. You are still doing it. We have procedures. You abandoned procedure when you decided her life mattered less. Hale looked around, aware of every face watching him. I made a medical judgment. No, Nora said. Everyone turned toward her. She stood beside Maya with blood on both gloves. You made a judgment before examining her. Hale's expression sharpened. Captain Bennett. You looked at her missing insignia, her size, and her silence. Then you decided she was expendable. The words struck the room one by one. Hale opened his mouth. Nothing came out. A sudden alarm sounded from Maya's monitor. Her body tensed. The line on the screen became uneven. Nora, Reeves said. I see it. Nora adjusted the oxygen mask and checked the wound. She's bleeding faster. Maya's hand moved weakly beneath the blanket. Reeves caught it. For the first time, the commander's control slipped. Stay with me. Maya's eyes opened. There's another team. Reeves frowned. What? Northridge. Extraction is moving. No, her breath hitched. Wrong route. Reeves leaned closer. Say again. Maya forced the words out. Convoy map was altered. East Trail is exposed. Send them through the Dry Creek bed. Reeves looked toward the radio operator. Transmit it. Hale stared at her. She was moments from losing consciousness, yet her mind remained on soldiers still outside. The radio operator relayed the coordinates. A reply came almost immediately. Command confirms hostile movement along the East Trail. Reeves closed his eyes for one brief second. Maya had just saved them again. Nora reached for the stretcher rails. We're taking her into surgery. There's no open room, Hale said. Reeves looked toward a storage area separated by canvas curtains. Then make one. That space is not sterile. Make it sterile. We don't have enough staff. Reeves removed his jacket. Tell me where to stand. For the first time that night, no one questioned the order. The hospital moved around Maya. Tables were cleared. Lights were repositioned. Equipment was carried across the floor. And as they pushed her toward the improvised operating area, Hale remained alone beside the wall. The same wall where he had left her to die. The storage room became an operating theater in less than 4 minutes. Metal shelves were pushed against the walls. Supply crates were dragged into the corridor. A portable surgical light flickered once, then steadied above Maya's stretcher. Nora stood at her side, cutting away the last of the blood-soaked fabric. The wound is deeper than I thought, she said. Reeves remained near Maya's head, one hand braced against the stretcher rail. How bad? Nora did not look up. Bad enough that she should have been treated 20 minutes ago. The words were not aimed at Hale. They did not need to be. He stood outside the canvas partition, silent beneath the eyes of the medics who had followed his orders. A junior corpsman connected the bloodline. Pressure is still dropping. Increase the flow, Nora ordered. Maya stirred beneath the oxygen mask. Her eyelids opened halfway. Reeves. I'm here. The team. Redirected through the creek bed. Confirmation. 2 minutes ago. They avoided the east trail. Maya closed her eyes again. Only then did the tension leave her face. Reeves stared at her. She had needed proof that the others were safe before allowing herself to stop fighting. Nora examined the wound. Fragment entered below the ribs. It may have struck the liver. Can you remove it? I can control the bleeding. That is the priority. Outside the partition, another radio transmission came through. Extraction team to field hospital. We have recovered 5 personnel. No additional contact. Reeves exhaled slowly. The men Maya had warned them about were alive. A medic pulled the curtain aside. Commander, they found something in the vehicle. He held out a black waterproof pouch, its surface scarred by heat. Reeves took it and opened the seal. Inside was a damaged identification card, a folded mission tag, and a metal insignia wrapped in cloth. The trident caught the light. Hill saw it from across the room. So did everyone else. The symbol was small, but there was no mistaking it. Navy SEAL. The medic looked from the insignia to Maya. She was carrying this? Reeves nodded. Not for display. He unfolded the mission tag. A photograph appeared beneath the plastic cover. Maya stood in full combat gear beside 7 operators, her expression calm while the men around her grinned at the camera. Below the photograph were 4 words. Team Leader, LT Maya Cross. The room changed again. One of the orderlies who had pushed her away from trauma lowered his eyes. The corpsman who had called her a contractor stepped backward. Hill stared at the card. She's an officer? Reeves looked at him. That would not make your decision better. Hill swallowed. I was managing limited resources. You were protecting resources from someone you decided was unimportant. That is not fair. Reeves's voice dropped. Fair. He walked toward Hale, carrying the damaged identification card. She entered hostile territory with 8 people under her command. Their convoy was hit. Their communications failed. She held the ridge, moved the wounded, restored the signal, and remained behind so the others could escape. He placed the card against Hale's chest. You saw the person who made that possible and decided she was not worth a bandage. Hale looked around. No one defended him. From behind the curtain, Nora's voice cut through the silence. I need assistance. Hale moved instinctively. Nora appeared at the opening. Not you. He stopped. Captain, you are relieved from this case. You do not have that authority. Reeves stepped beside her. She does now. Hale's face lost its color. Reeves turned to the senior corpsman. Escort Major Hale to the command office. He is not to leave the base. 2 military police officers entered from the corridor. Hale looked toward Maya. She never told me who she was. Maya's eyes opened beneath the surgical light. Her voice came weakly through the mask. You never asked whether I was human. No one moved. The statement hung in the room, quieter than the machines and heavier than any accusation. Hale lowered his head. The officers led him away. Nora closed the curtain. Commander, I need you outside. Reeves hesitated. Maya looked at him. Go. He leaned closer. That's an order? A faint smile touched her face. You still remember those? Then her eyes closed. The monitor accelerated. Nora reached for her instruments. Start the procedure. Reeves stepped outside as the curtain sealed behind him. For the first time that night, he could do nothing but wait. The waiting began with silence. Commander Reeves stood outside the canvas partition, listening to the muted rhythm of instruments and clipped medical commands from inside. Around him, the field hospital continued to function, but no one spoke above a whisper. The men Maya had saved were stable. One had regained consciousness. Another had asked for her twice. None of them knew whether she would survive the next hour. Reeves looked down at the cracked black watch resting in his palm. Nora had removed it before surgery and handed it to him without explanation. He knew the story behind it. 7 years earlier, Maya had been the youngest member of a reconnaissance team operating along a mountain corridor no map identified. Correctly, their mission had collapsed before dawn. Communications failed. Air support never arrived. Only 4 people returned. The watch had belonged to Chief Aaron Cross, Maya's older brother. He had died holding the evacuation route open. Since that day, she had worn it on every mission, not as a reminder of death, as a reminder that someone had to stay focused when everything fell apart. A stretcher will squeaked behind Reeves. He turned. Petty Officer Miller, pale and heavily bandaged, was being moved out of surgery. He lifted one hand weakly. Commander. Reeves stepped beside him. You should be resting. Cross. Still in surgery. Miller closed his eyes. She came back for me. Reeves said nothing. The corpsman pushing the stretcher slowed. Miller looked toward the curtain. I told her to leave. His voice cracked, more from memory than pain. The ridge was collapsing. We had maybe 30 seconds before they closed the route. She could have made it alone. Reeves lowered his gaze. What did she say? Miller gave a weak, exhausted laugh. She said team leaders don't count themselves first. The corpsman looked away. Miller continued. She dragged me through half a kilometer of rock and mud. Every time I lost consciousness, she hit my vest and told me to stay awake. His breathing became shallow. Then she heard the others calling for help. Reeves already knew the rest. Maya had hidden Miller behind a stone wall, crossed back into open ground, and reached 2 more wounded operators before enemy fire cut off the ridge. The mission report would call it extraordinary courage. The men who had been there would call it Tuesday, because that was who Maya was. Inside the improvised theater, Nora's voice rose. Pressure falling. Reeves stepped toward the curtain. A medic blocked him gently. Sir, I need to know what's happening. She's losing too much blood. Another alarm sounded. Then another. The hospital seemed to tighten around the noise. Nora called for more gauze. A corpsman answered that they were almost out. Reeves turned toward the main supply bay. Bring everything we have. The senior medic shook his head. If we empty the reserve, we won't have enough for another mass casualty event. Reeves stared at him. No one in the room had forgotten Hale's argument. Limited supplies. Confirmed personnel. People worth saving. The medic's face tightened. I'm not saying we don't use it. Then don't finish that sentence. The man nodded and ran. Seconds later, crates were opened across the floor. Sterile packs, blood tubing, clamps, and dressings moved toward the theater. Every resource Hale had tried to protect was now being used to keep Maya alive. The irony was not lost on anyone. A young nurse stood beside Reeves, holding a sealed surgical pack. Sir, she said quietly, I was here when Major Hale ordered us to move her. Reeves looked at her. She struggled to meet his eyes. I didn't agree with him. But you obeyed. Yes. Why? The nurse looked toward the curtain. Because he outranked me. Reeves's expression remained hard. Rank explains an order. It does not excuse abandoning judgment. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. I know. Before Reeves could answer, the curtain opened. Nora stepped out. Her gloves were covered in blood. Reeves searched her face. Well, we removed the fragment. Relief moved through the room, but Nora did not smile. She's still unstable. Can she recover? Nora looked back toward Maya. She has been fighting for everyone else since she entered this hospital. Then she faced Reeves again. Now we find out whether her body has anything left to fight for itself. Maya did not wake when the surgery ended. Nora transferred her to the quietest corner of the hospital, away from the incoming stretchers and radio traffic. A ventilator breathed for her. 2 monitors tracked the fragile rhythm of her heart. Commander Reeves remained beside the bed. The cracked watch lay on the table near Maya's hand. For 3 hours, nothing changed. The storm moved east. Rain softened against the roof. Beyond the hospital walls, the base slowly returned to order. Inside, the men Maya had saved began asking questions. Petty Officer Miller was the first to arrive. He should not have been walking. A corpsman followed with one hand near his shoulder, ready to catch him if his knees failed. Miller stopped at Maya's bedside. The woman who had carried him down the ridge now looked smaller beneath the white blankets than she ever had in combat gear. He removed the patch from his sleeve. It bore the emblem of their team. Carefully, he placed it beside her watch. She hates ceremonies, Miller said. Reeves looked at him. This is not a ceremony. No, Miller stared at Maya. It's a debt. One by one, the others came. A wounded communications specialist left a bent antenna clip. Another placed a compass beside the patch. The youngest operator, his arm secured against his chest, set down a single rifle cartridge. None of the objects had monetary value. Every one of them meant she had brought someone home. By sunrise, 7 items rested on the table. 7 men alive. 7 reasons Maya had nearly died. Nora entered carrying the latest results. Reeves stood immediately. Tell me. She made it through the night. Miller exhaled, but Nora raised one hand. She is not out of danger. Her blood pressure is improving, but slowly. We need to move her to a surgical facility as soon as the weather clears. When transport aircraft is being prepared now. Reeves nodded. Then he noticed two military police officers outside the hospital entrance. Major Hale stood between them. His uniform was still neat, but the confidence had disappeared from his face. Reeves stepped into the corridor. Why is he here? One officer handed him a document. Preliminary investigation order, sir. Command requested an immediate statement from all personnel involved. Hale looked through the doorway toward Maya's bed. I asked to see her. No, Reeves said. I need to explain. To her. Hale swallowed. To everyone. The medics nearby stopped working. Nora stepped into the corridor. Hale looked at her first. I made the wrong call. No one responded. He continued. I saw an unidentified casualty during a resource shortage. I decided the safest option was to prioritize those whose status I could verify. Nora's expression remained cold. You keep describing it like a calculation. It was. No, she said. It was prejudice wearing the language of procedure. Hale lowered his eyes. Reeves watched him carefully. Would you have moved her if she had been a 6-foot male officer? Hale did not answer. That silence was enough. Miller appeared behind Nora, leaning against the wall. You left her because she didn't look important. Hale looked at him. I did not know she was your commander. Miller stepped closer despite the pain. She shouldn't have needed to be. Hale's face tightened. I know that now. Miller shook his head. No. You know who she is now. That is not the same lesson. The words left Hale with nowhere to hide. Inside the room, a monitor changed rhythm. Nora turned immediately. Maya's fingers moved. Reeves rushed to the bed. Maya. Her eyelids trembled. Then slowly, painfully, they opened. The room filled with people, but Maya focused only on Reeves. Her voice was little more than air. Team. All 7 survived. She looked toward Miller. He raised one hand. Still ugly, ma'am. A faint smile touched her lips. Then her eyes shifted toward the objects beside the watch. You cluttered my table. Miller laughed once, then covered his face. Reeves leaned closer. You scared everyone. Maya's gaze moved past him. She saw Hale standing in the corridor. For a moment, neither spoke. Hale stepped forward. I was wrong. Maya studied him without anger. That somehow made the moment harder. He continued. I treated your identity as proof of your value. I understand now that your life had value before I knew your rank. Maya breathed slowly. Do you? Yes. She looked toward the junior medics gathered behind him. Then teach them. Hale's eyes lifted. Teach them what? Maya's voice remained weak, but every person heard it. That the wounded don't earn care by impressing you. Silence followed. Not the silence of fear. The silence of people remembering. Outside, engines began turning on the runway. The transport aircraft was ready. And for the first time since Maya had entered the hospital, every person in the room moved with one purpose. To bring her home. The transport aircraft lifted off just after sunrise. Maya lay secured beneath a thermal blanket, surrounded by medical equipment that trembled with the vibration of the engines. Nora sat. Beside her, one hand resting near the monitor controls. Commander Reeves occupied the seat across from them. He had not slept. Neither had anyone else. Through the small window, the mountains fell away beneath a layer of pale cloud. Somewhere below, the ridge where Maya had made her stand disappeared into the morning haze. Maya opened her eyes once during the flight. Reeves noticed immediately. Still with us. She looked toward the window. Unfortunately, Nora almost smiled. That sarcasm is a good sign. Maya shifted slightly, then stopped when pain tightened across her face. Where are we going? Naval Medical Center, Reeves said. Full surgical team is waiting. Team. Stable. All of them. All 7. Maya closed her eyes again. That answer seemed to matter more than anything else. When the aircraft landed, an ambulance convoy was already waiting on the runway. Doctors rushed forward, expecting an unidentified casualty from a classified operation. Then they saw the trident beside her file. The atmosphere changed. Orders became sharper. Movements became faster. But Nora saw the irony immediately. Maya had been just as wounded before anyone knew what symbol belonged beside her name. At the hospital, she underwent a second operation. This time, no one questioned whether she deserved the blood. No one asked for proof before touching the wound. No one moved her aside. For 6 hours, Reeves and the surviving members of her team waited in a secure corridor outside the operating room. Miller sat in a wheelchair despite repeated orders to return to his own ward. The others stood or leaned against the wall, bandaged and exhausted. No one left. When the surgeon finally emerged, every man rose. "She survived the procedure," he said. "The next 48 hours will matter, but she has a strong chance." Miller lowered his head. Reeves closed his eyes. No one celebrated. They had seen too many victories turn fragile when spoken aloud. 2 days later, Maya woke to the sound of quiet arguing. Miller stood near the doorway while a nurse tried to remove him. "You need rest," the nurse said. "I rested yesterday. You lost a dangerous amount of blood." "So did she. That does not make this medically reasonable." Maya opened her eyes. "Let him stay." The nurse looked toward the bed. Miller grinned. "Command decision." "You are not in command here," Maya said. "Good. Then nobody can order me out." The nurse sighed and left. Miller moved closer. "You look terrible." "So do you. That means we're recovering." Maya looked toward the table beside her bed. The cracked watch was there. So were the patch, compass, cartridge, antenna clip, and 3 other small objects from the field hospital. "You brought all this." Reeves did. "Sentimental. He'll deny it." Maya reached toward the watch but could not lift her arm. Miller picked it up and placed it carefully in her palm. For a long moment, she stared at the broken glass. "Did anyone else die?" she asked. Miller's expression changed. "No civilians. No confirmed losses. Support personnel? Everyone extracted." Only then did Maya allow herself to breathe fully. Miller watched her. "You know, most people ask whether they're going to live. I already knew. You were unconscious for 2 days. Still knew." He shook his head. Then his voice became serious. "Hale has been suspended." Maya looked at him. "Pending investigation," Miller continued. "Nora submitted a full report. So did Reeves. Every medic in that field hospital is being interviewed." Maya's fingers closed around the watch. "What about the younger staff?" "Most followed orders." "That isn't what I asked." Miller understood. "They're still working." "Good." He frowned. "Good. They need to remember it." "You think suspension is enough?" "I think punishment is easy." Maya looked toward the window. Changing judgment is harder. 3 weeks later, she returned to the forward base. She was not cleared for combat duty. Her steps were slower, and the wound beneath her uniform still pulled with every breath. But she walked through the hospital doors without assistance. The room fell silent. Nora stood near the central station. The young nurse who had admitted obeying Hale lowered her eyes. The corpsman who had called Maya a contractor set down the supplies in his hands. Maya stopped in the center of the room. No speech had been planned. No formation had been ordered. Still, everyone faced her. Nora stepped forward. "Lieutenant Cross." Maya looked around at the same walls, the same lights, the same corner where she had been left bleeding. Then she spoke. "You do not need to salute me." No one moved. "You do not need to apologize because I was a SEAL." The room became even quieter. "You need to remember that you did not know who I was." Her gaze passed from one face to another, and that should never have mattered. At the rear of the room, a new casualty was rushed through the doors. No identification, no unit patch, no visible rank. The young nurse moved first. "Trauma Bay 1, she called. "Now." No one asked whether the patient was important. They simply began saving a life. 6 weeks later, the investigation ended. Major Victor Hale was removed from clinical command and reassigned pending further review. The official report cited failure to assess a critical patient, misuse of triage authority, and conduct that placed a wounded service member at unnecessary risk. But the report did not capture the silence in the hospital after Maya left. It did not describe the way the younger medics began checking every casualty before reading the uniform. It did not mention how Nora rewrote the intake protocol so that unidentified patients were assessed by condition first and status second. It did not record the sentence taped above the trauma desk. "Treat the wound, not the rank." No one admitted who had posted it. Everyone knew. Maya returned to duty slowly. First came physical therapy, then weapons review, then long mornings walking the perimeter with Reeves while the rest of the base was still waking. She hated being watched. She hated being helped more. On her first day back in uniform, she stopped outside the operations building and adjusted the sleeve over her scar. The cracked black watch remained on her wrist. Reeves noticed. "You could replace that." No, it barely works. So do I. He gave her a look. Maya kept walking. Inside the briefing room, the 7 men from the Ridge were waiting. Miller stood at the front beside a covered display case. Maya stopped at the doorway. What is this? No ceremony, Miller said quickly. She looked at the gathered officers. There are 20 people in here. Small meeting. There is a flag, decoration, and a podium. Miller glanced at Reeves. I told him she'd notice. Reeves stepped aside. Inside the display case was Maya's damaged mission tag, the team patch, the bent antenna clip, the compass, and the single rifle cartridge. Beneath them was a simple metal plate. No one left behind. Maya stared at it longer than anyone expected. Miller's voice softened. We wanted the next team to know what happened. They'll read the report. The report says you led an extraction. That's what happened. No, Miller said. You stayed when you could have left. The room remained still. Maya looked at the faces of the men she had carried, protected, and ordered out. You would have done the same. Miller nodded. Because you taught us to. For once, Maya had no answer. Reeves approached the podium. This is not about rank, he said. It is not about medals. And it is not about creating a legend. Maya glanced at him as if warning him not to continue. He did anyway. It is about judgment. His eyes moved across the room. On the Ridge, Lieutenant Cross judged that 7 lives mattered more than her safety. Then he looked toward the hospital visible through the window. And hours later, someone else judged that her life mattered less because he did not recognize her. No one shifted. No unit can survive when respect depends on appearance. No medical system can function when care depends on status. And no leader earns authority by demanding what they refuse to give. Reeves stepped away. Maya stood in front of the display case. She did not salute it. She did not touch the medal someone had placed beside her mission tag. Instead, she turned toward the youngest operators in the room. You will be underestimated, she said. Her voice was calm. You will also underestimate others. The men listened. That second mistake is the one you control. She looked toward Miller. Strength is not always loud. Then toward Nora, who stood near the back. Courage is not always found on a battlefield. Finally, she looked at the trident on her own uniform. And a symbol does not make a life valuable. The room stayed silent after she finished. Not because they were unsure what to say. Because nothing needed to be added. Later that afternoon, Maya walked through the field hospital one final time before returning to active assignment. The lights were the same. The generators sounded the same. But the people moved differently. A stretcher came through the doors. The patient was unconscious. No identification. No visible rank. A new medic reached for the casualty tag. Nora stopped him. Airway first. The team moved instantly. Maya watched from the corridor. No one noticed her. That was how she preferred it. As she turned to leave, the young nurse who had once obeyed Hale saw her. Lieutenant. Maya paused. The nurse straightened. We remember. Maya looked toward the trauma bay, where strangers worked to save someone whose name they did not know. Then she gave one small nod. Outside, the sun was dropping behind the ridge. The same ridge where men had once believed she would not return. Maya pulled her sleeve over the cracked watch and walked toward the operations building. No applause followed her. No one called her a hero. They simply made room as she passed. Because respect had never been something she asked for. It was something she had earned. And this time, they understood the difference.